first thing I remember is the taste of copper in my mouth and a woman's voice saying, "She's awake." My name is Mia, though when I first opened my eyes in that hospital bed 3 months ago, I wasn't sure of even that much. The woman leaning over me had kind eyes and auburn hair pulled back in a neat bun. She squeezed my hand gently. "Mia, honey, it's me. It's Rosalind, your sister." Sister. The word felt foreign, like trying on clothes that didn't fit. I stared at her face, searching for something familiar, some spark of recognition. Nothing. My voice came out as a croak. "I don't remember you." Her face crumpled with what looked like genuine grief. "The doctors said this might happen. You hit your head pretty hard in the accident." Accident. Another blank space where memories should be. A man appeared beside her, tall, dark-haired, wearing an expensive-looking suit that somehow seemed wrong for a hospital room. He had the kind of smile that belonged in a toothpaste commercial. "Hey there, beautiful." He leaned down to kiss my forehead, and I instinctively pulled back. His smile faltered for just a second. "It's okay. I'm Dean. Your husband." Husband. I looked down at my left hand and saw a diamond ring that felt heavy and unfamiliar. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I don't remember getting married." Dean's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Well, we weren't in the best place before the accident." Rosalind shot him a warning look. "What Dean means is that you'd been going through a difficult time. You were stressed, pushing everyone away." "I was?" "You fired your assistant, cut off most of your friends, even stopped talking to me for weeks before—" Rosalind's voice broke. "Before this happened." I felt a crushing weight settle on my chest. What kind of person was I? Over the next few days, they painted a picture of my life that made me sick to my stomach. According to Rosalind, I'd been selfish, demanding, impossible to please. I'd inherited our family's estate and lorded it over everyone. I'd treated Dean terribly, accusing him of things he'd never done. "You were always so angry," Rosalind said one afternoon, showing me photos on her phone. In every picture, I looked tense, unsmiling. "Nothing was ever good enough for you?" She'd brought journals. Apparently, I'd been seeing a therapist and keeping detailed records of my episodes. Page after page of my own handwriting, describing fits of rage, paranoid thoughts, cruel things I'd said to people who loved me. I wrote all this. "Dr. Martinez suggested it might help you process your feelings," Dean said from the doorway. "Though you never seem to get better." I flipped through the pages, horrified. Had I really called Rosalind pathetic for not having her own place? Had I actually thrown a glass at Dean during an argument? "I'm so sorry," I said, tears streaming down my face. "I'm so sorry." Rosalind pulled me into a hug. "That's why we're here, honey. To help you become the person you were meant to be." They brought me home to a house I didn't recognize. All clean lines and expensive furniture that felt cold and unwelcoming. My clothes were designer brands I'd never heard of. My car was a BMW I was apparently too scared to drive now. "You love this place," Dean said, gesturing around the living room. "You picked out every piece yourself." I nodded and smiled, but something felt wrong. Why would I choose furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum instead of a home? That night, Dean made dinner while Rosalind helped me organize my medications. Anti-anxiety pills, antidepressants, something for mood stabilization. "You were on these before?" I asked. "Dr. Martinez prescribed them after you started having those episodes," Rosalind explained. "They should help keep you calm." I took them without question. After all, they knew me better than I knew myself. But later, lying in bed next to a man who felt like a stranger, I had a flash of something. A memory, maybe? Or a dream? I was laughing, really laughing, with a woman who had curly black hair and bright red lipstick. We were sitting in what looked like a coffee shop, and she was saying something about how I always made her feel better about everything. The woman's face was clear in my mind, but when I'd asked Rosalind about my friends earlier, she'd shown me photos of people I apparently couldn't stand. None of them had curly black hair. 3 months later, I'd become everything they wanted me to be. "Good morning, beautiful," Dean said, wrapping his arms around my waist as I stood at the stove making his eggs, exactly how he liked them. over easy with the yolks barely set. "Morning," I replied, leaning into him the way a good wife should. "Coffee's ready." "You're getting so much better at this domestic stuff," he said, kissing my neck. The old Mia would have burned water. I laughed on cue. Lucky me, getting a fresh start. Rosalind breezed in through the back door. She had a key, of course, since she was helping with my recovery. She'd practically moved in, sleeping in the guest room most nights to keep an eye on me. "How's our girl today?" she asked, ruffling my hair like I was a child. "Great, making Dean's favourite breakfast." "Look at you, being so thoughtful." She poured herself coffee, from the pot I'd learned to make strong, the way they both preferred it. "Remember when you used to complain about making anything more complicated than toast?" I shook my head. I can't imagine being that lazy, but even as I said it, another flash hit me, standing in what looked like a bright, modern kitchen, different from this one, laughing as I flipped pancakes while music played loudly. Someone was dancing behind me, spinning me around, flour getting everywhere. The memory vanished as quickly as it came. "Earth to Mia," Dean said, snapping his fingers. "You're burning my eggs." "Sorry." I quickly slid them onto his plate. "I was just thinking." "About what?" Rosalind's voice had an edge to it. "Nothing important, just wondering if I should plant flowers in the front yard." They both relaxed. Dean patted my shoulder. "That's my girl, always thinking about making things prettier." After Dean left for work, Rosalind settled at the kitchen table with her laptop. She worked remotely now, something about needing to be available for me. I cleaned the kitchen, did laundry, organised closets, the perfect little housewife. But the flashes kept coming. While folding clothes, I remembered standing in front of a room full of people, pointing at architectural drawings on a wall. Everyone was listening intently, nodding at my suggestions. I was wearing a sharp blazer and felt important, confident. "Rosalind," I called from the bedroom. "Did I used to work?" "You had some little design hobby," she called back. "Nothing serious. You mostly just bossed people around and spent money." That afternoon, while she was on a conference call, I snuck onto the computer. I typed Mia Moore birthday into Google, not even sure why. A video popped up from 2 years ago. The thumbnail showed me blowing out candles, surrounded by at least 20 people. I looked happy, really happy. My hair was shorter, and I was wearing a flowing dress that looked nothing like the conservative clothes hanging in my closet now. I clicked play with the volume low. "Can't believe Mia's 32 already," a man's voice said from behind the camera. He had a slight accent, maybe British. "Feels like yesterday she was 25 and convinced she could redesign half of downtown." The camera panned to show me laughing, my head thrown back. "Don't encourage her, Bodhi," someone called out. "She'll actually try to do it." Bodhi. The name sent a jolt through me. "That's what I love about her," the voice behind the camera continued. "Mia doesn't just dream big, she makes it happen. She's the most determined person I know, and she never lets anyone tell her she can't do something." I paused the video. The woman on screen looked like me, but she seemed like a completely different person. Strong, sure of herself, surrounded by people who genuinely seemed to enjoy her company. "What are you watching?" I spun around. Rosalind stood in the doorway, her face carefully neutral. I found this old birthday video." She walked over and closed the laptop. "Honey, we've talked about this. Looking at old stuff just confuses you. Those people weren't really your friends, they were just using you for your money. But they seemed isn't the same as reality." Her voice was gentle but firm. "You told me yourself how fake they all were, how they'd smile to your face and talk behind your back." "I did? It's in your journals, remember? You wrote about how isolated you felt, even in a crowd." I nodded, but something nagged at me. The woman in that video hadn't looked isolated. She'd looked like she belonged. That night, Dean came home with flowers, grocery store daisies, not the expensive arrangements I apparently used to demand. "For my sweet wife," he said, kissing my cheek. "You've been so good lately." "Thank you, they're beautiful." "The old Mia would have complained they weren't roses," Rosalind said from the couch. "Well, The new Mia appreciates thoughtful gestures, I replied. Dean beamed. See? I told you she just needed time to become herself again. Later, after they'd both gone to bed, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. A phone buzzed somewhere in the house, not mine, which was charging on the nightstand. The sound was coming from downstairs. I crept out of bed and followed the sound to Dean's study. A phone I'd never seen before was lighting up on his desk. The text message was still visible on the lock screen. I still miss you. Is this safe? The sender was listed as Z. I stared at that phone for what felt like hours before creeping back upstairs. The next morning, I acted normal, made breakfast, smiled at Dean's jokes, let Rosalind fuss over my medication schedule, but I couldn't stop thinking about that text. I still miss you. 2 days later, I told them I needed a dentist appointment. I can drive you, Rosalind offered immediately. It's just a cleaning. I'll be fine. Are you sure? You know how you get anxious in new situations. I'll manage. I kept my voice light. Besides, I need to start doing things on my own eventually, right? Dean looked up from his laptop. She's right, Ros. We can't baby her forever. Rosalind's jaw tightened, but she nodded. Call if you need anything. Instead of going to the dentist, I drove to the coffee shop I'd found online, the one from my flash of memory. My hands shook as I texted the number from Dean's phone. This is Mia. Can we meet? Grind coffee on 5th Street, 2 p.m. The response came back immediately. Oh my God, yes, I'll be there. I arrived early and sat in a corner booth, my heart hammering. At exactly 2 p.m., a woman with curly black hair walked in. She was scanning the room, and when her eyes landed on me, her face lit up. Mia! She rushed over, but stopped short when she saw my expression. Oh, honey, you look different? Terrified. She slid into the booth across from me. I'm Zella. I know who you are. I remember flashes. We were friends? Her eyes filled with tears. Best friends. For 8 years, until I became horrible and pushed everyone away. Zella's face went through several emotions. Confusion, anger, then something like understanding. Who told you that? My sister. My husband. They showed me journals, photos. I was apparently awful to everyone. Mia. Zella reached across the table and grabbed my hands. You were never awful. You were the kindest person I knew. You helped me through my divorce, let me stay at your beach house for 3 months, paid for my mum's surgery when I couldn't afford it. Beach house? The one you inherited from your grandmother. You loved that place. Said it was the only spot where you felt completely yourself. I pulled my hands back. I don't have a beach house. Rosalind said I sold all my properties except the main house because I was being reckless with money. Zella stared at me. Mia, you would never sell that house. Ever. You told me you wanted to be buried there. Maybe I changed my mind. Rosalind said I was making a lot of bad decisions before the accident. What accident? I heard you were in the hospital, but no one would tell me what happened. Dean blocked my number, and Rosalind told people you didn't want visitors. I told her about the car crash, the head injury, the memory loss. With each detail, Zella's face grew paler. This is insane, she whispered. The Mia I knew was planning to leave Dean. You found out he was stealing from your business accounts. You were going to file for divorce. That can't be true. You called me the night before your accident. You were scared. You said Dean had been acting strange, following you around, checking your phone. You were going to stay at my place until you could figure things out. The coffee shop suddenly felt too hot. You're wrong. Dean loves me. He's been taking care of me. Mia, look at me. Zella's voice was urgent. Really look at me. Do I seem like someone who would lie to you? I studied her face, the genuine concern, the tears she was trying to hold back, the way she leaned forward like she wanted to protect me from something. You said Dean was stealing. You hired a forensic accountant, found out he'd been siphoning money from your design firm for months, and there was something else. She hesitated. What? You thought he was having an affair with Rosalind. The words hit me like a physical blow. That's impossible. You found texts between them, romantic ones. You showed me screenshots. I stood up abruptly. I have to go. Mia, wait. This is crazy. You're trying to confuse me. But even as I said it, I remembered Dean's hand on Rosalind's lower back yesterday morning. The way they sometimes finished each other's sentences. How Rosalind always seemed to know exactly what Dean wanted before he asked. Here. Zella pressed a piece of paper into my hand. My real number, not the one they probably have. If you remember anything at all, call me. I drove home in a daze. Rosalind was waiting in the kitchen. How was the dentist? Fine, just a cleaning. Good. Dean's working late tonight, so it's just us girls. I thought we could order pizza and watch a movie. I nodded and smiled, but my mind was racing. That night, after Rosalind went to bed, I crept into Dean's study. I needed to see those financial documents Zella mentioned. The filing cabinet was locked, but I remembered seeing Dean hide a key under his desk lamp. My hands trembled as I opened the first drawer. Inside were bank statements, business contracts, and a folder labelled Power of Attorney, Mia Moore. I opened it with shaking fingers. The signature at the bottom looked like mine, but I had no memory of signing it. The date was 3 days after my accident, when I was still unconscious in the hospital. According to this document, I had given Dean and Rosalind complete control over all my assets, my business, everything. But I'd been in a coma. I couldn't have signed anything. I photographed every document with my phone before carefully putting everything back. The next morning, I told Rosalind I was going grocery shopping. Instead, I drove to the address Zella had given me for Bodhi. He lived in a converted warehouse downtown, the kind of artsy space I apparently used to love before I became this suburban housewife version of myself. When he opened the door, his face went through the same shock I'd seen with Zella. Jesus, Mia, what did they do to you? I looked down at my outfit, a beige cardigan and khaki pants that Rosalind had picked out. I dressed differently now. You look like you're wearing a costume. He stepped aside to let me in. The Mia I knew wouldn't be caught dead in beige. His apartment was full of photographs, landscapes, portraits, architectural shots. Several featured a woman I slowly recognized as myself, but with shorter hair and wearing bold colours. You took these? I'm a photographer. Was your photographer for your design firm's marketing materials? He paused. Among other things. Zella said we were involved? We dated for 6 months, about 2 years ago. Ended things when you decided to work on your marriage. His voice was carefully neutral. Though you called me the week before your accident. What did I say? That you'd made a mistake. That Dean wasn't who you thought he was. Bodhi moved to his kitchen and started making coffee. You were scared, Mia. Really scared. Of what? You'd found financial discrepancies in your business accounts. Money missing. You suspected Dean, but you needed proof before you could act. I pulled out my phone and showed him the photos of the power of attorney documents. His face darkened as he scrolled through them. This is fraud. You were unconscious when this was supposedly signed. How can you be sure? Because I was at the hospital every day for the first week, until Dean had security ban me from your room. You didn't wake up for 10 days. The coffee maker gurgled in the silence. Finally, Bodhi spoke again. There's someone you need to talk to. Savannah, your former assistant. She tried to warn you about Dean before the accident. Rosalind said I fired her. You didn't fire her. Dean did, the day after your accident. Told her you wouldn't be needing her services anymore. An hour later, we sat in Savannah's small apartment. She was a petite woman with kind eyes who kept staring at me, like I was a ghost. You look so different, she said softly. Not just the clothes, your whole energy. Tell her what you told me, Bodhi urged. Savannah pulled out a manila folder. I kept copies of everything. I knew something was wrong. She spread documents across her coffee table, bank statements, invoices, email printouts. Dean had been forging your signature on checks, small amounts at first, then larger ones. When you started asking questions, he got sloppy. Look at this. She pointed to a check made out to D. Emerson Consulting for $15,000. You never authorized this. I know because you always reviewed every payment over $500 personally. How much total? Over the past year? Nearly $200,000. My stomach dropped. And you told me this before the accident? I tried to, But every time I brought it up, Dean would appear, like he was monitoring your schedule, your meetings. The day before your accident, I finally got you alone." "What did I say?" "You were furious. You told me to compile everything and that you were going to confront him that weekend." Savannah's voice dropped. "The accident happened that Friday night." Bodhi leaned forward. "Tell her about the car." "Your brakes failed, right?" "That's what the police report said." I nodded. "Dean had been working on your car that week. Said he was changing the oil, doing maintenance. You thought it was sweet that he was taking care of things for you?" The room spun. "You think he sabotaged my brakes?" "I think it's a hell of a coincidence," Bodhi said grimly. I spent the next 2 hours going through documents, listening to their stories about who I used to be. The picture they painted was nothing like what Rosalind and Dean had told me. "I need to get home," I finally said. "They'll be suspicious if I'm gone too long." "Mia," Savannah grabbed my arm as I stood. "Be careful. If they're willing to forge legal documents and steal your money—" "They might be willing to do worse," Bodhi finished. "That night, I played the perfect wife and sister. I made dinner, laughed at Dean's jokes, let Rosalind brush my hair like I was a child. But as Dean got ready for bed, I watched him differently. When he smiled at me, I wondered if it was the same smile he'd worn while tampering with my brakes. "You seem quiet tonight," he said, sliding into bed beside me. "Just tired." He pulled me close and I forced myself not to stiffen. "I love this new you, Mia. So much easier to be around." "Easier?" The old you was always questioning everything, always suspicious. This version trusts me. He kissed my neck. "It's nice to have a wife who doesn't fight me on every little thing." I lay there in the dark, listening to his breathing slow into sleep. Around 2 a.m., he started talking in his sleep, something he'd apparently always done, according to Rosalind. Should have made sure," he mumbled. I held my breath. "You were never supposed to wake up." The words were barely audible, but they hit me like ice water. I waited until his breathing was deep and regular again, then carefully slipped out of bed. In the bathroom, I stared at my reflection and saw the woman from Bodhi's photographs starting to emerge behind my eyes. The scared, confused victim they'd created was disappearing, and the woman underneath was getting angry. The next morning, I called Bodhi from the grocery store parking lot. "I need to see my car, the one from the accident." "Mia, are you sure? It might be—" "I need to see it." He picked me up an hour later. The salvage yard was on the outskirts of town, filled with twisted metal and broken dreams. My BMW sat in the back corner, its front end completely crushed. "Jesus," Bodhi whispered. The yard manager, a gruff man named Pete, led us over. "You're lucky to be alive, lady. Brake failure at that speed. Most people don't walk away from something like this." "Can you show me the brake lines?" Pete crawled under the wreckage with a flashlight. "Yeah, here's your problem. Clean cut right through the main line. Looks like it was nicked, then gave out under pressure." "Nicked how?" "Could have been wear and tear, but—" He emerged, wiping his hands on a rag. "In my experience, brake lines don't usually fail this cleanly. Looks more like someone took a blade to it, left just enough so it wouldn't fail immediately." Bodhi and I exchanged looks. "How long would something like that take to give out?" I asked. "Depends on how much you drove, how hard you braked. Could be days, could be weeks. Real delayed reaction type thing." On the drive back, I was quiet until Bodhi pulled over. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking Dean tried to kill me, and when that didn't work, he decided to kill who I was instead." "So what do? "We get proof, real proof, and then we destroy them." That afternoon, I told Rosalind I was having headaches and needed to rest. Instead, I met with Bennett, the family lawyer. His office was downtown, all dark wood and leather-bound books. "Mia, it's wonderful to see you up and about." He stood to shake my hand. "How are you feeling?" "Confused about some legal documents. This power of attorney, for instance." I showed him the photos on my phone. His face grew troubled as he studied them. "I didn't prepare these documents, but they have your letterhead." "Forged. Look at the signature block. That's not how we format our documents. And This notary seal, he pulled out a magnifying glass. This is fake. A good fake, but fake nonetheless. So these documents are worthless. Completely fraudulent. The real power of attorney you signed years ago was very limited. It only covered medical decisions if you were incapacitated, and it expired automatically after 30 days. Can you help me fix this? Bennett leaned back in his chair. Mia, if what you're telling me is true, we're talking about fraud, forgery, possibly attempted murder. This isn't just a family dispute. I know, but I need to be smart about this. If I go to the police now, it's my word against theirs. They'll say I'm confused from the head injury. What do you need from me? New documents. Real ones, revoking any power they think they have over my assets. But I need you to keep this completely confidential until I say otherwise. Consider it done. That evening, I stopped by an electronics store and bought a tiny wireless camera, the kind used for home security. The clerk showed me how to connect it to my phone. Popular item lately, he said. Lot of people want to keep an eye on things without being obvious about it. Exactly. At home, I hid the camera in the living room bookshelf, angled toward the couch where Dean and Rosalind usually sat for their evening talks. Then I went upstairs and pretended to have one of my episodes. I can't find my medication, I called out, making my voice sound panicked. Where did I put it? They both came running. It's okay, honey, Rosalind soothed. I moved it to the kitchen cabinet, remember? For safety. I don't remember anything. I let myself cry, really cry. What if I'm getting worse? What if I never get better? Dean rubbed my back. Hey, it's okay. Maybe we should call Dr. Martinez, increase your dosage. You think that would help? Absolutely. The more stable you are, the easier this is for all of us. After they got me calmed down and back to bed, I watched the camera feed on my phone. They sat on the couch with glasses of wine, talking in low voices. She's getting more agitated, Rosalind said. It's fine. Dr. Martinez said this might happen as her brain tries to heal. The medication will keep her manageable. What if she starts remembering things? Dean laughed. Like what? Her perfect life that she threw away? Her amazing friends who dropped her the second she got difficult? I still can't believe how easy this was, Rosalind said, curling up against him. She just accepted everything we told her. That's because deep down she knows she was a selfish bitch. We just gave her permission to believe it. They kissed, and I watched my husband and sister celebrate how thoroughly they'd destroyed me. But I wasn't destroyed. I was planning. The next morning, I called Zella. I need your help with something. How do you feel about throwing a party? What kind of party? A family appreciation dinner. I want to thank Dean and Rosalind for everything they've done for me. Invite some old friends, make it really special. Mia, are you sure that's a good idea? Trust me, it's going to be perfect. I spent the rest of the day making lists, planning menus, crafting the perfect trap. Dean and Rosalind thought they'd won. They had no idea the game was just beginning. 2 weeks later, I stood in my kitchen, addressing invitations in my carefully practiced new Mia handwriting. What's all this? Rosalind asked, peering over my shoulder. I'm planning a dinner party, a family appreciation dinner, to thank you and Dean for everything you've done for me. Her face lit up. Oh, honey, that's so sweet. Who are you inviting? Just some old friends, people I want to apologize to for how I treated them before. I handed her the guest list. I thought it would be good for my healing process. She scanned the names. Zella, Bodhi, Savannah, a few others from my old life. Her smile faltered slightly. Are you sure you're ready for this? Some of these people, they might bring up painful memories. That's exactly why I need to do it. Dr. Martinez says facing my past is the only way to move forward. Dean walked in, loosening his tie. What's this about Dr. Martinez? Mia wants to throw a dinner party, Rosalind explained, to apologize to her old friends. That's... Dean paused, clearly trying to figure out if this was good or bad for him. That's very mature of you, sweetheart. I want to show everyone how much I've changed, how much better I am now, thanks to both of you. When are you thinking? Rosalind asked. Next Saturday. I already called the caterer. You called a caterer? Dean's eyebrows shot up. That's expensive. I know, but I want this to be perfect. Besides, it's my money, right? I smiled innocently. I mean, our money. They exchanged a quick glance. Of course it's our money, Dean said smoothly. I just want to make sure you're not overdoing it. I promise I'm not. This is important to me. Over the next week, I played the part of the eager hostess. I fussed over menu details, rearranged furniture, and practiced my grateful victim routine in the mirror. But I was also busy with other preparations. I met with Bennett to finalise the new legal documents. I coordinated with Bodhi about the documentary crew he was bringing. Actually, his photographer friends, who would be recording everything. I even had a fake psychiatrist's report prepared, one that would make Rosalind and Dean overconfident. Dr. Martinez wanted me to give you this, I told Rosalind on Friday, handing her an official-looking document. She read it quickly. Permanent emotional dysregulation due to traumatic brain injury? He says I'll never be able to handle complex decisions or high-stress situations again. I'll always need someone to take care of me. Rosalind's eyes practically glowed. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. It's okay. I'm lucky to have you and Dean. That night, I overheard them talking in the kitchen. Did you see that report? Rosalind whispered. Perfect timing. Now we don't have to worry about her getting suspicious or trying to take control back. She's like a grateful little puppy now. It's almost too easy. The best part is, she's doing all the work, bringing everyone together so they can see how reformed she is. No one will ever believe she was anything other than the monster we said she was. Saturday arrived grey and drizzly, but I was practically vibrating with energy. The caterers arrived at noon, transforming my cold, museum-like house into something warm and inviting. You seem excited, Dean observed, adjusting his tie in the hallway mirror. I am? This feels like a new beginning. Rosalind emerged from the guest room in a black cocktail dress that was definitely too fancy for a simple dinner party. How do I look? Beautiful, I said. You both look perfect. The first guests arrived at 6. Zella came early, as planned, bringing flowers and a nervous smile. You look amazing, she said, hugging me. Are you ready for this? More than ready. Bodhi arrived with his documentary crew, 2 friends with professional cameras who introduced themselves as film students working on a project about recovery and forgiveness. We're so honoured to capture this special evening, one of them told Dean and Rosalind. Mia's story is truly inspiring. It really is, Rosalind beamed. She's come so far. Savannah came next, looking nervous but determined. Then a few other old friends, who'd been shocked to receive invitations from the woman they'd been told wanted nothing to do with them. Mia, one of them said, a woman named Claire, who'd apparently been in my book club. I have to say, you seem so different. I am different. Better, I hope. Definitely calmer, she said diplomatically. As more people arrived, I watched Dean and Rosalind work the room. They were in their element, playing the devoted family members who'd stood by me through my difficult period. She was so angry before, I heard Rosalind telling someone, just full of rage and suspicion. We were honestly worried about her mental health. But look at her now, Dean added. So peaceful, so grateful. It's like she's finally become the person she was meant to be. I moved through the party like a gracious hostess, making sure everyone had drinks, introducing people, playing the perfect reformed version of myself. Thank you all for coming, I said when everyone had arrived. I know many of you have questions about everything. But I wanted you to see how much I've changed, and to thank the 2 people who made it possible. I raised my glass toward Dean and Rosalind. To my devoted husband and loving sister, who never gave up on me even when I gave up on myself. The room filled with polite applause. Dean and Rosalind glowed with pride. Now, I continued, I'd like to share some thoughts about family, loyalty, and the importance of truth. I caught Bodhi's eye. He nodded slightly. The cameras were rolling. It was time. Before my accident, I began, my voice carrying clearly through the room. I was apparently a terrible person. Selfish, cruel, impossible to love. At least, that's what I've been told. Dean shifted uncomfortably. Rosalind's smile looked frozen. My devoted sister Rosalind has shown me journals documenting my awful behaviour. My loving husband Dean has patiently explained how I pushed everyone away with my paranoia and accusations. I walked slowly around the room, making eye contact with each guest. They've been so patient with my recovery, so understanding when I couldn't remember basic things, like signing legal documents. I pulled out a folder and opened it. For instance, I apparently signed a power of attorney 3 days after my accident, giving them complete control over my assets. Isn't that interesting, considering I was in a coma for 10 days? The room went dead silent. Dean's face had gone pale. "Mia," Rosalind said carefully, "you're confusing yourself again. Remember what Dr. Martinez said about your episodes?" "Oh yes, Dr. Martinez. The psychiatrist who supposedly diagnosed me with permanent emotional dysregulation." I pulled out another document. "Except this report is fake. I had it made at a print shop downtown for $50. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Rosalind's mouth fell open. "You see, I wanted to test something. I wanted to see how you'd react if you thought I'd never be able to challenge you again. And you didn't disappoint." I nodded to Bodhi, who pulled out a tablet and connected it to the large TV on the wall. "Last week, I recorded this conversation between my husband and sister." The video played. Dean and Rosalind on the couch, wine glasses in hand, celebrating how easy I was to manipulate. She just accepted everything we told her. Rosalind's voice filled the room. "That's because deep down she knows she was a selfish bitch," Dean's voice replied. Several guests made sounds of shock and disgust. Claire covered her mouth with her hand. "But wait, there's more," I continued, my voice getting stronger. "Savannah, would you like to share what you discovered about my business finances?" Savannah stood up, her hands shaking as she held up bank statements. "Dean has been embezzling from Mia's design firm for over a year, nearly $200,000, forged signatures on checks made out to fake consulting companies." "That's a lie." Dean finally found his voice. "She's making this up." "Am I?" I turned to face him directly. "Then explain this." The next video showed Dean and a man I didn't recognize in what looked like a bar, talking about the Mia problem. "The break thing should have worked," the man was saying. "Clean cut, delayed failure. No way to trace it back to you." "Yeah, well, she's tougher than I thought," Dean replied. "But this memory loss thing might actually work out better, easier to control." The room erupted. Several people stood up shouting questions. Dean lunged toward me, but Bodhi and 2 other men blocked his path. "You manipulative bitch," Dean snarled. "You planned this whole thing." "I learned from the best," I replied calmly. Rosalind was backing toward the door. "This is insane. Mia's having a breakdown. She's not well." "Sit down, Rosalind." My voice cut through the chaos like ice. "We're not done." She froze. "Tell everyone about the beach house, the one I supposedly sold because I was being reckless with money." "I don't know what you're talking about." "The deed transfer is public record. You transferred it to yourself 2 weeks after my accident, while I was unconscious." I pulled out more documents. "And the business accounts Dean's been draining?" "Those were transferred too. Everything was transferred, using forged power of attorney documents." Bennett stood up from where he'd been sitting quietly in the corner. "As Mrs. Moore's attorney, I can confirm that all of these transfers were fraudulent. The real power of attorney was limited and expired weeks ago." "Who are you?" Rosalind demanded. "Bennett Gibson, family attorney. I've prepared new documents restoring all assets to their rightful owner." He handed me a thick folder. "Everything has been reversed as of this morning." Dean made another move toward me, his face twisted with rage. "You think you're so smart? You think you've won?" "I think you tried to kill me, and when that failed, you decided to kill who I was instead. But here's the thing about trying to destroy someone. Sometimes you just make them stronger." Rosalind finally broke. "You had everything," she screamed. "The house, the money, the business. You didn't even appreciate it. You just took it all for granted while I had nothing. So you decided to take it from me. We deserved it more than you did. We actually cared about the family legacy. By stealing it? By trying to murder me? The accident was supposed to be quick," Dean shouted. "You weren't supposed to survive and become this victim everyone felt sorry for." The room went completely silent. Even the cameras stopped moving. "Did you just confess to attempted murder?" Claire asked in a whisper. Dean realized what he'd said. His face went white. I didn't mean..." "Oh, but you did mean it." I smiled for the first time all evening. And it's all on camera. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. I called the police 20 minutes ago, I announced. They should be here any moment. As if on cue, the front door burst open. Officers flooded in, followed by detectives who'd apparently been waiting outside. Dean Emerson and Rosalind Moore, the lead detective announced. You're under arrest for fraud, forgery, conspiracy, and attempted murder. As they read them their rights, Rosalind looked at me with pure hatred. You'll never be happy, she hissed as they cuffed her. You'll always be alone. Maybe, I said, but I'll be free. The party guests watched in stunned silence as my husband and sister were led away in handcuffs. I turned to face the room full of people who'd once been my friends. So, I said, who wants dessert? The courtroom was packed the day Dean and Rosalind were sentenced. I sat in the front row, wearing a bright red dress, the kind of bold colour the old Mia would have chosen. Dean Emerson, the judge announced, you are hereby sentenced to 15 years in state prison for attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy. Dean's shoulders sagged. He didn't look back at me. Rosalind Moore, you are sentenced to 8 years for fraud, conspiracy, and accessory to attempted murder. Rosalind did turn around. Her eyes found mine across the courtroom, still filled with that familiar hatred. I met her gaze steadily until she looked away. After the sentencing, reporters crowded around me on the courthouse steps. How does it feel to get justice? One of them called out. Justice isn't the right word, I said. Justice would be getting my 3 years back. Justice would be never having to wonder if the people who claimed to love me were planning my death. What's next for you? Living my life. The real one this time? Bodhi was waiting by his car, camera equipment in the back seat. The documentary he'd actually been filming, about my recovery and revenge, was already generating interest from streaming platforms. Ready to go? He asked. I nodded. Let's get out of here. We drove in comfortable silence until we reached the coast. My beach house sat on a bluff overlooking the Pacific, exactly as I'd remembered it in my scattered flashbacks. The key was still hidden under the driftwood sculpture by the front door. Inside, everything was covered in dust sheets, but underneath, the house was exactly as I'd left it. Bright colours, comfortable furniture, books scattered everywhere. Photos of real friends, real memories, real laughter. It's perfect, Bodhi said, pulling off a sheet to reveal a turquoise couch. Very you. The real me, anyway. Savannah arrived an hour later with groceries and a bottle of champagne. She'd agreed to come back as my assistant, but this time as a true partner in rebuilding my design firm. The Hendersons want to hire us for their new restaurant, she said, unpacking food in the kitchen. And 3 other clients have called since the trial ended. People love a comeback story, I said. People love authenticity. You're finally being yourself again. Zella showed up as the sun was setting, carrying takeout from our old favourite Thai place. Thought we could have a proper celebration, she said, hugging me tight. No hidden cameras, no fake personalities, just us. We ate on the deck, watching the waves crash below. For the first time in 3 years, I felt completely relaxed. So what's the plan? Zella asked. Stay here permanently? For now. I need to remember who I am when no one's watching me, when no one's trying to control me. And us? Bodhi asked quietly. I looked at him, really looked. The way he'd dropped everything to help me, the way he'd believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself, the way he looked at me like I was worth saving. I don't know yet, I said honestly. I need to figure out who I am before I can figure out who I want to be with. He nodded. I can wait. You might be waiting a long time. I've been waiting 3 years already. What's a little longer? That night, after everyone had gone home, I walked down to the beach alone. The sand was cold under my bare feet, the ocean endless and dark. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the messages that had been pouring in since the trial. Apologies from friends who'd believed the lies about me. Job offers, interview requests, even a few movie producers interested in my story. But there was one message that made me pause, from a number I didn't recognise. I saw the news. I'm sorry for what they did to you. I'm sorry I believed them. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. Mum, my mother, who'd cut me off completely after Rosalind told her I'd become impossible to deal with, who'd refused to visit me in the hospital because she thought I was faking my injuries for attention. I stared at the message for a long time, then deleted it. Some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt. Some relationships weren't worth salvaging, even with family. I walked to the water's edge and let the waves wash over my feet. In my pocket was the hospital bracelet I'd worn for weeks after the accident, the last remnant of the helpless victim they'd tried to make me. I pulled it out and held it up to the moonlight. Such a small thing to represent such a complete destruction of self. I threw it as far as I could into the dark water. The waves swallowed it immediately, like it had never existed at all. I turned and walked back toward the house, toward the warm lights and the life I was building from scratch. Behind me, the ocean erased my footprints from the sand, but I wasn't looking back anymore. I had learned something valuable in those 3 years of being someone else, the difference between being broken and being rebuilt, between being controlled and being free, between existing and actually living. Dean and Rosalind had tried to erase me, but they'd failed at the most important part. I was still here, and I was done being anyone but myself.